Federal judges have also blocked several of the president's executive actions as these legal battles play out. Dozens of legal challenges the Trump administration is facing.
In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has ruled against the Trump administration, ordering the repayment of nearly $2 billion in frozen foreign aid to nonprofit organizations. And hey, don't forget to subscribe, and comment on our channel for daily updates. This ruling marks one of the first major legal challenges to President Trump's executive actions, setting the stage for what could become a fierce legal battle over the limits of presidential authority. The decision comes amid a wave of lawsuits against the Trump administration, 98 cases filed in just the first month, as federal courts continue to scrutinize executive orders aimed at reshaping the federal government. At the heart of the Supreme Court's decision is the administration's attempt to withhold $2 billion in foreign aid from nonprofit organizations. The funds had already been approved, but were frozen through executive action, prompting immediate legal challenges. Lower courts had ruled that the action was unlawful, and now the Supreme Court has upheld that decision, forcing the Trump administration to comply. However, the ruling leaves several unanswered questions, including when and how the administration must release the funds. The Supreme Court's ruling is just one of nearly 100 legal challenges that the administration has faced since Trump's inauguration. From immigration policies to federal spending, nearly every area of Trump's executive governance has become a legal battleground. Many of these cases are still in the early stages, but they could ultimately reach the Supreme Court, just like this one. In several instances, federal judges have already stepped in, issuing temporary restraining orders against Trump's policies. These court orders have paused key initiatives, preventing them from taking full effect while legal battles play out. One of the biggest issues in government transparency cases is consistency. If the administration argues one thing in court but then contradicts itself in public statements, it creates a serious problem. The dispute over Musk's role in DOJ is just one example of the broader legal uncertainty surrounding the Trump administration's policies. With dozens of lawsuits pending, the Supreme Court ruling is unlikely to be the final word on Trump's executive actions. The foreign aid case will now return to the district court, which must clarify the government's obligations under the ruling. Legal experts believe this could delay the actual payment of the funds for months or even years. Meanwhile, other executive orders, particularly those related to immigration, trade, and government spending, are still tied up in legal battles. Many are expected to reach the Supreme Court in the near future, potentially shaping the boundaries of executive power for years to come. For now, the Supreme Court's ruling marks a significant moment in the ongoing legal battle over executive power. But with nearly 100 lawsuits still unresolved, the coming months promise to be a defining period for Trump's presidency and the future of presidential authority in the United States. As the Trump administration grapples with the Supreme Court's ruling on frozen foreign aid, another crisis is unfolding, one that threatens both domestic stability and global economic balance. While protests erupt across the U.S., driven by rising inflation, social unrest, and plummeting approval ratings, Trump's fractured relationship with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is further deepening tensions. With Ukraine signaling a possible shift towards European Union support, the fallout could have far-reaching economic consequences, affecting U.S. foreign policy and global markets.
Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Brussels ahead of an emergency defence summit with senior EU leaders as Europe prepares to ramp up defence spending. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, said this morning that leaders were meeting to rearm Europe and further cement their support for Ukraine. She says extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures.
In the wake of ongoing protests, economic turmoil, and a sharp decline in approval ratings, the Trump administration is facing one of its toughest political battles yet. The streets of major U.S. cities are flooded with protests, discontent is rising among the American people, and the stock market is responding negatively to growing political instability. Recent reports indicate that President Donald Trump's approval rating has fallen to historic lows, raising concerns over the economic future of the United States and its global standing. At the heart of this crisis is Trump's fractured relationship with Ukraine and President Volodymyr Zelensky, a diplomatic fallout that could have devastating economic consequences for the U.S. and the world. How did we get here? And what does the future hold for Trump, America's economy, and the global balance of power? Public confidence in Trump's leadership has been on a downward spiral for months. New polling data shows that his approval rating has dropped to record lows, with dissatisfaction soaring among independent voters and even some members of his own Republican base. According to a recent Gallup poll, Trump's approval rating has plummeted below 30%, making him one of the least popular presidents in modern American history. Key factors behind this decline include widespread protests demanding social and economic justice, rising inflation and concerns about job security, political scandals and ongoing investigations, and foreign policy tensions, particularly with Ukraine and NATO allies. As uncertainty spreads, investors are growing nervous, and consumer confidence has taken a hit, both of which could accelerate economic instability in the coming months. Meanwhile, discontent is boiling over into the streets. Mass protests have erupted in New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Chicago, with demonstrators calling for economic reform, social justice, and greater government accountability. Many protesters are angry about inflation and the rising cost of living, while others are demanding stronger checks on executive power following Trump's recent policy decisions. Social unrest is particularly high among young Americans, who have been hit hardest by economic uncertainty. Unemployment rates remain high, and wages have failed to keep up with the rising cost of basic necessities. Protesters have accused the administration of failing to address income inequality, ignoring critical issues like healthcare and education, and undermining democracy through executive overreach. With no clear resolution in sight, some analysts warn that these protests could escalate into an even bigger national crisis, leading to further political instability and economic damage. As Trump's domestic troubles mount, his foreign policy decisions have further complicated America's economic future. One of the biggest international flashpoints has been Trump's deteriorating relationship with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine, a key U.S. ally, has long relied on American support in its ongoing conflict with Russia. However, Trump's recent policy shifts have led to serious tensions between Washington and Kyiv. Trump allegedly threatening to cut off United States military aid unless Ukraine aligned itself more closely with his administration's political interests. Tensions escalated after Ukraine signaled that it might prioritize European Union support over United States backing, a move that could reshape global economic alliances. In response, Trump publicly criticized Zelensky, leading to a diplomatic rift that has sent shockwaves through international markets. If Ukraine pivots towards Europe and distances itself from the United States, the economic consequences could be severe for both America and global markets. Ukraine is strategically important to U.S. energy and defense interests. A shift toward the EU could mean less business for American companies involved in defense contracts and energy partnerships. Ukraine plays a crucial role in global energy transit, particularly in the natural gas supply to Europe. If Ukraine aligns more closely with the EU, the U.S. could lose influence over crucial energy routes, making the American energy sector less competitive. Foreign policy instability tends to shake investor confidence. If U.S.-Ukraine relations collapse, markets could react negatively, triggering potential stock market dips and increased economic volatility. Ukraine's realignment would not just impact the U.S., it could have ripple effects across the world. If Ukraine strengthens ties with the EU, Europe will gain greater access to Ukrainian resources and geopolitical influence, while the U.S. loses its strategic foothold in Eastern Europe. If the U.S. reduces support for Ukraine, Russia may take advantage of the situation to increase its presence in the region, further weakening Western influence. A weakened U.S.-Ukraine alliance could also affect NATO dynamics, as Ukraine has long been a critical partner in European security efforts. In short, the consequences of a weakened U.S.-Ukraine relationship could be felt far beyond Washington and Kyiv. It could reshape global economic and security dynamics for years to come. Can the U.S. economy withstand these challenges? With falling approval ratings, massive protests, and international tensions, the Trump administration faces a major test. Can the U.S. economy remain stable amid all this political and economic turmoil? So far, the signs are not promising. The stock market has shown volatility, with investors concerned about political instability. The dollar has weakened against major global currencies. Inflation remains high, and job growth has slowed. If Trump fails to restore confidence, both at home and abroad, the United States economy could enter a prolonged period of uncertainty, something that would impact businesses, workers, and global markets alike. The coming months will be critical in determining the trajectory of Trump's presidency and America's economic future. Will Trump's approval rating continue to decline, or can he regain public trust? Will the protest escalate, or will the U.S. economy remain stable amid all this political and economic turmoil? Or will the administration address the concerns of the people? Will the fallout with Ukraine lead to economic consequences, or can diplomacy restore stability? These are the pressing questions that could shape not just the future of the United States, but the balance of global power. As uncertainty looms, one thing is clear. The political and economic landscape is shifting, and the decisions made in the coming weeks could change history. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comment, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay updated.